I talk, you listen. Welcome to my one-man panel of madness. All right, everyone. This is Dr. Gio Who, and well, it's almost time. Star Wars is Star Wars Week is. I mean, it's going so fast. We had the premiere of Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker this past Monday, and so I'm trying to keep myself away from any and all spoilers. I mean, I'm talking about not even checking my email, social media. Even just putting this together right now, I was just thinking, wait, this has to be uploaded and this has to go into social media. So I will be as careful as possible. But very happy to introduce our first ever countdown to Star Wars. And so I thought of just doing some fun things like sharing what some of my favorite Star Wars things are. So before I do, I want to share something. And it's really why I feel the way I do this week about Star Wars. And Star Wars is not just a series of movies and TV shows and novels and comic books and all that stuff. It's actually been so much a part of my life. And the things that I'm obsessed with, whether it's, Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, those would be like the three top shows, or that's where my fandom, those like my top fandom are those three. And the reason is because they all had something to do with me at some point in my childhood or my teenage years or even going into college and so forth. But Star Wars is really important because I remember some of the earliest memories I have as a child are of Star Wars. And so for me, it's a very important part of my life. And I was just actually texting someone about that because my cousin is also very excited. And my cousin, who I didn't really raise him, but I took care of him as a baby. I mean, I remember when he was born. I know I introduced him to Star Wars because I had the video cassettes, and whenever he and I were together, we'd watch Star Wars. So it's something that's very important to me. And the way my mom tells this is that when the first movie came out, she was still pregnant with me when she went to go see the movie. So I'm assuming that the sounds of, I don't know, fire fights and speeders and all that must have resonated, while I was gestating inside of her. God, that's terrible to say it that way. But anyways, so she said that the first movie, she was still pregnant with me. The second movie, I believe she says I was like 2 years old, which I have to verify because I think that the other movie did not come out. I think it was 1981. So I should have been like 3 years old. But she said I was still an infant. And it was because my stepbrother wanted to go see the movie, and he kept asking my mom, please take me to go see it. And of course, she went, and she took me along. And she said that I didn't cry throughout the whole movie. I just didn't cry. I probably didn't know what was going on, but I didn't cry. And then the third, Return of the Jedi, I actually saw in theaters. And I remember that day because I was in love with the Ewoks. I thought they were real teddy bears, okay? And so my childhood, there's a few things that I remember specifically, like the movie E.T. I remember very, vividly crying on the way home because E.T. left. And my mom promising that E.T. would one day return. I don't know how the woman knew it, but if you watched the commercials, there was a commercial that came out during I think it was the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. E.T. did come back and revisited it with Elliot and all that. So I forgave her. I said, Mom, you're right. E.T. did come back, so I forgive you. But this isn't a show about E.T. This is about Star Wars. And so I thought that I would start doing some breakdowns or ranking on some of the stuff that we currently have right now on Star Wars as a way to lead into the actual release, which is coming up. Like I said, people have already seen the movie. There are already spoilers. There's already things out there. So be safe, be careful. So I'm going to start with this. And again, that's why Star Wars is very important to me, is because it has literally been a part of like my mom said, I was still a baby inside of her. I wasn't even born yet. And I experienced Star Wars in my mother's womb. So it means a lot to me. And I think this week I've kind of been a bit overwhelmed because it is the end. And there's back and forth about whether or not there's going to be another trilogy. Now originally there was going to be trilogies made by Game of Thrones producers, Ryan Johnson, and then all this stuff just started changing, and now the tune is there will be movies. Whether or not they get sequels is dependent on the movie. I mean, there's so many things going on. So I believe that this is the last of Star Wars in a sense of like trilogies and the way that the Star Wars mythos was and what it is today. So with that, I wanted to start with some of the shows that are Star Wars related. No, I'm not going to talk about the Christmas special, even though I have watched it and I remember as a kid liking it. Okay, I know it was one of those missteps that people hate and dread, but hey, whatever. I liked it. But I won't talk about that. So we'll talk about the things that are currently out, like Mandalorian, which, to start off with, that's a show in itself. But I really am enjoying Mandalorian. I'm a huge fan of samurai movies and really Japanese culture in general. And one of my close and dear friends likes a series of Japanese movies about a blind samurai warrior. And in some of the stories, some of the stories actually have him with a child. And actually, there are other samurai stories out there that are similar to The Mandalorian. So I know some people have complained and said, well, wait a second, this is just a knockoff of some of the really great samurai movies that have come out of Japan. Yes, I do see some truth in that. It's just a little different. What we have to remember is that even George Lucas, when he talked about the origins of Star Wars, he talked about the samurai, right? He talked about all these influences that he received from, Japanese culture and mythology and all these different things. So there's nothing wrong, I think, in my opinion, that Mandalorian is sort of like maybe a updated space samurai type movie. TV series. But I really like it. I think it proves that Star Wars can happen without Jedi. And I think Rogue One, which we're going to talk about in another episode, is probably one of those, another example of a Star Wars movie, not needing to have Jedi and all that stuff in it. Of course, they're mentioned, but not needed. So, really liking The Mandalorian. I like to learn more about the child, and I will not call it Baby Yoda because we know it's not Yoda, so there's no point in calling it Baby Yoda. So the child, I think, is probably a lot more apt to refer to it. So ranking it with other shows that right now that I'm thinking about, like Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and of course Star Wars Resistance. So I started recently binge watching Star Wars Resistance to see where it ranks with my favorite show would have to be Clone Wars, followed by Rebels, and then in third place Resistance. And the reason for that is that Star Wars Clone Wars was really all those deep, rich stories about what was going on, in between the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith is really cool. I mean, you see how all these characters were a part of essentially, the backbone to the story of the Republic and really the ending of the Republic. And the Mandalorians being introduced, going to the Mandalorian planet, and all this different stuff. It's just there's so much to talk about that could be a show in itself. But really, really enjoyed the Clone Wars, and I really am glad to see that it will be coming back with one more season, as Dave Filoni's mentioned, and it's going to really tie up all the loose ends. So my next favorite show is Rebels. Star Wars Rebels was really cool. I was gutted when they said they were going to cancel it. They probably could have gone further, but I love the introduction of Ahsoka, Darth Vader, Grand Moff Tarkin. I mean, again, all these stories that take place in sort of little sections of time and space that we don't know about. And that's what I liked about these two shows, is that it's showing us some of the backstories of things that we kind of know because of the movies, but we don't see how they got to that point. And I love the Ghost. The Ghost, I know some people call it, it's just the child of the Millennium Falcon, which I love. One of my favorite ships, right there with the TARDIS, the Enterprise, Millennium Falcon. Um, but I love the Ghost. She is so, I don't know. She's like almost like a shuttlecraft because her movements are a lot more than kind of like the bigger, bulkier Carillion ships. Well, obviously, yeah, because Carillion ships are huge. But anyways, that's not what I was talking about. I was actually thinking about the Millennium Falcon and started thinking about Carillion ships. Anyways, I love the Ghost. I thought that it was really cool to have this new crew. Zeb was just kind of awesome. All the characters, Sabine, all of them just had these really rich qualities to them. And I love learning more and more about them. So I definitely have to say that my number two is definitely Rebels. I love that I even, there was my last Star Wars celebration I went to, I found a group of friends who all dressed up as the characters. And I got a group photo with them, and it was awesome. I still have that picture. It's amazing. And so Star Wars Resistance. I started watching it a while back. I think I saw the first 2 episodes on YouTube because they were free. And I couldn't get into it right away. I mean, just the fact that Poe was there and BB-8, yeah, it kind of gave a connection to, Force Awakens and all that. But I don't know. It was like, I really couldn't get into it until a few episodes in. And then I thought to myself, well, this is kind of like Deep Space Nine. It's a station in water. And spoilers, if you haven't seen it yet, there's more to it. It's kind of a ship. So I won't say any more in case you haven't seen it, because it's still pretty new. But recently, again, I started binge watching it and kind of finished the first season. And by the end of the first season, I actually ended enjoying it. Like I gave it enough time because it's only 22-minute episodes. So I gave it time, and I really like this. I like the ending of the season because it ties into Force Awakens, and you kind of see what was going on before Starkiller Base started taking out the New Republic planets. So I like that. I like I like connections. I'm all about connections. Like if there's a TV show or TV series, and they show like connections to how things got there. Like that's one thing I love about Doctor Who, is that sometimes we get every now and then a glimpse of how the Doctor got to where he is or something like that. Like backstories. I love backstories to things that I've already seen established. So yeah, I think it's kind of cool, but I definitely see why it didn't make the numbers. If you kind of research yourself, it didn't quite make the numbers that Rebels did in viewer numbers, and so it's going to be obviously canceled after a second season. But according to Disney and Lucasfilms, it's because the show is actually going to wrap up with Rise of Skywalker. So I mean, again, there wouldn't be any point. But then again, if you think about Clone Wars, the movies have been done, right? We saw the end of Revenge of the Sith, and yet they still kept going on with stories. So it depends on how you perceive it. So that is my ranking of the TV shows that we currently have right now with regards to Star Wars, and we have a lot more coming up. I'm just getting started. I'm going to be doing a movies ranked, and I will be putting the standalone movies on their own because they're standalone movies. But you're going to hear my ranked Star Wars movies and learn what is my favorite and what is my least favorite. I don't want to say that I don't like it, because I do like them. I like them all. But the one that I least enjoy or watch, I guess so. So this is Dr. Gio Who. May the Force be with you. And again, I'm excited. Stay away from spoilers. Stay away from social media. Read a book. Hey, comic books. There's a bunch of Star Wars comic books you could be watching. Or go back and rewatch a lot of the TV shows. That's what I'm doing. Anyways, this is Dr. Gio Who, and ending transmission.